All right, everybody, it's another episode of the Reserve Man Podcast. I'm Dick Brown. I got with me GP.
What's happening?
There's no Shag Ruffin today.
Not at all.
What's up, Stan?
What's good, man?
We got with us Jess Los.
Just Los.
Dr. Byron Jasper. Say hello to the people.
Hey, people, how y'all doing?
Today we're going to talk a little bit about HIV. What is it? The origins of it. The impact in the black community. And we definitely have to talk about the stigma of HIV in our community. That and so much more right after this.
You know your credit score bad. That's solid quality time. Right. Why is Steve Harvey still writing books? If I want you, I ain't say you to Waffle House at 2 a.m. Cause you bullshit. I care about you. We going to Waffle House.
All right, everybody, we have a great episode for you today. Let's start by introducing our guest. We have with us Jess Los again. You want to say anything, brother?
Just Los.
All right. And we have with us Dr. Byron Jasper.
Yes, sir. How's everybody doing?
Good,
Doing
man.
pretty good,
man.
man.
Good, man.
Why don't
Thank
you
y'all
tell
for
us a
having
little
me.
bit about yourself?
Originally from Houma, Louisiana.
What?
Born and raised, and left Houma and went to New Orleans and educated at Xavier University in Louisiana, class of 06. And left from Xavier, did medical school at Tulane, followed by a master's also at Tulane. Did my family medicine residency at Baton Rouge General. Left there and did 2 years of fellowship in Washington, D.C., one in community health leadership and development, which is basically public health related, and also learning how to teach.
Is that what your master's is in?
Master's is in public health, specifically health systems management. And then after the community health fellowship, I did a final fellowship in HIV and hepatitis C medicine, also in Washington, D.C., before coming back to Baton Rouge and practicing family medicine and HIV and Hep C.
So
Man.
we can say that you're well educated.
Well educated. On a good day.
From Houma, Louisiana.
Yeah, man.
He loved home.
Okay.
Oh man, like that
Why?
Houma Thibodeau area was the greatest place on earth to me when I was in high school.
Come on,
Because
man.
right down the road, right down the bayou, man.
Yeah, man.
I used to be, I used to be courting in that little mall with the Rite Aid.
You're right.
Back
There
in
you
the
go.
day.
There you go. Right there. That
Yeah,
was back.
man.
If you go way back in the day, that was when Chick-fil-A was in there. And
What?
then
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that's long. That's a long time ago, though.
A very long
I
time.
don't know nothing about that. That's the Donaldsonville to Houma
Hey
connection.
man, got my first Saints jersey out that mall, man. It's special.
Man.
So, first of all, brother, we're glad to have you.
Yep.
We're going to talk a little bit about HIV today.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's an issue that don't get talked about enough, particularly here in Baton Rouge, because I understand we rank pretty high per capita.
Yeah, man, it's insane that a lot of people don't realize the epidemic that's going on, not only in Baton Rouge, but also in New Orleans. And the idea that a lot of people don't know is mind-boggling to me, considering when I see patients who have it, they've had it for so many years or decades that when you have somebody who gets a new infection, you would swear they might have known somebody who had it before just based off of where we're at. But they oftentimes are just like a deer in headlights compared to anybody else.
Could you maybe put some stats to it so people that are listening, so it can hit home for them?
Yeah, I'll, for an effort of not going too far, I'll say that per the last check, we had a ranking of number one in the country.
Baton
Rouge, Louisiana, number one in the country on people living with HIV. So
Okay.
I think that's the stat that you probably want to focus on. I would say as far as new infections, we're probably in the top 5 as far as the country. And I always try to explain this to people, the country, not the state.
Right.
So that's better than New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and these cities that have double and triple and sometimes quadruple the amount of population we have. We're in the top 5.
So that's not a percent per capita. That's just cases.
Cases.
Number. Straight up.
New cases, versus
Yeah, I was about to-
people living with
I
HIV.
thought it was per capita.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's insane.
Right. So,
Wow.
and that's
So
why I
it's
said,
just, oh man, I thought it was
Yeah, I thought it was per capita.
man, it was wild out
Y'all
here,
better be
man.
I do have a follow-up question, but first I want to ask, so where's New Orleans on that list?
so New Orleans is also in the top 5. It's been a while since I pulled the data as far as, and when I say a while, probably in the last 2 to 3 years. But when I was lecturing on this 2 or 3 years ago, Miami was 1, Baton Rouge was 2, New Orleans was 3.
Yeah.
And
I remember that ranking.
right, and
remember
then
that.
it sometimes just shifts around.
Yeah.
And the idea of shifting around is depending on when you pull the data and how many people are actually reporting. You might get more in the beginning of the year compared to the end of the year, and the idea is those numbers switch. But
Yeah.
pretty much the same top 5 most of the times, same top 10 most times.
Y'all be safe, man.
You just like
y'all
you know.
married.
I already knew we were number 1, but like they said, I thought we were per capita.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, that-
when
that
you start
really-
talking about New York, LA, and Houston, and we still number 1.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
That's
I don't-
crazy.
I don't think we got a 500,000 people yet.
yeah. And that's why I said overall the idea
We got a couple.
overall the idea is when you see it, it's hard to believe, but if you start to actually know what the patient population looks like and where it is and where they get care, you'll start to say, okay, I get it now.
Do y'all have any kind of statistics as far as where y'all attribute most of those cases coming from, like drug usage versus sexual
And of course, yeah.
Yeah.
recklessness?
So across the
Reckless.
country,
They'll always gonna be reckless.
the number 1 infected population is usually the term changes from time to time. It's called MSM, men who have sex with men.
Okay.
Always and forever, for the most part, it's usually gay males who have the highest rate of infection and the most to live with the infection. Behind that is usually black females that are potentially heterosexual contact. And I say it kind of can shift. It depends on the demographic and it depends on the area, because sometimes it's people who inject drugs. That'll kind of come in at a solid number 2. But a lot of times it's usually gay males followed by black females that are heterosexual contact. And that's usually kind of the way it flows. So, you can get into small demographics from there saying black gay males versus white gay males versus Hispanic gay, but pretty much gay males. And then you're talking about heterosexual contact, it's black females.
That's interesting
That's-
because
yeah.
here recently we were talking about one of our episodes about how this younger generation of dudes, like college age people now, like they're more sexually fluid.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And in my honest opinion, that's completely fine. And I say
Right.
it's completely fine because it's your prerogative. What you do in your bedroom when your lights go off is up to you. I think the idea is once you decide to step outside of that,
Yeah,
knowing
protect
your
yourself.
status, knowing what you know is a lot better than saying, I don't know and I don't plan to find out until randomly one day. So if you don't know, then at this point, you're pretty much doing a coin toss on, hopefully I don't.
Yeah.
And if you live in this area and you have been sexually active, and I put it in very plain terms, and it might touch a nerve with some people who are listening. If you have been sexually active, notice I said sexually active, not if you have been married or not married. Because if you know what you know, you will probably find out that there have been people who have been married that have also gotten HIV. It's not just when you're married, it goes away.
Right.
But a lot of people think that for some reason. And again, I'm not going to sit here and say people that are married have a higher incidence or all that. That I don't know. But I think the idea is it's almost to the effect that I tell residents before. It's not like you say, well, when you're a diabetic, we don't need to get checked for diabetes no more because I got married.
Yeah.
So why is it when HIV comes up, it's, well, when I got married, then, I don't need to get checked for that no more. Why not just get checked for it? That way, if you get it, you can potentially treat it and live a long, happy, healthy life compared to we just not going to worry about it and hopefully.
But also theoretically, you can contract the disease and it may not manifest or they may not be able to detect it to much later, correct?
Manifest, yes. Detected, no. You can literally see an early detection probably anywhere from 7 to 14 days after you have contracted HIV. 7 to 14. So you can be asymptomatic for almost 3 to 4 years potentially.
Okay.
Sometimes it's earlier. Just depends on the person's overall health status. So if you are obviously a person who has more health issues, you may manifest the actual disease process and symptoms well before somebody who has no health issues. And that's why a lot of times the issue isn't so much waiting till you become symptomatic, it's getting checked regularly. Regularly meaning every 3 months, every 6 months, once a year, however you choose to do it, but you get checked.
Right.
Because again, if you don't know, how can you say you are not?
Right.
Right.
It's probably also a really good idea to get tested prior to getting married.
Absolutely. It's a good idea to get tested, period.
Yeah.
Right.
And I can go into more details about the CDC. There's a bunch of governing bodies, ACOG, American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, the United States Preventative Task Force. I probably messed that up, I'll be honest with you, but the idea is the USPSTF, another governing body. All of them recommend getting tested starting in your teenage years, all the way up to the age of 64, 65.
How often do they recommend?
Depends on your
testing?
risk status. If you
Okay.
have a riskier behavior, risky behavior is not just sexual, because a lot of people hear risky behavior and the first thing they think is sex. It could be also if you're injecting drugs.
Needle usage.
If you are also doing blood transfusions in some third world country or something like that, where blood isn't screened, the idea is if your behavior is risky, you get checked more regularly compared to somebody who has less risky behavior. Okay, so obviously I'll give you another analogy because I love analogies when I teach my patients. If you are at a place where you drive a race car, you're probably going to do more tune-ups than if you don't drive a race car, you drive a minivan. Because you're using it more,
Right.
you're putting it to the test more, you're going to have to do more work to get it up to status.
Right.
Compared to you driving that minivan and your soccer moms and whatnot, hitting those curves real slow.
Right.
You don't probably need to get those things checked as much.
Right.
So that's why the recommendation has continuously grown from what it used to be to where it is now.
So when you say high risk behavior, you did mention, blood transfusion, third world country, obviously sexual activity, obviously needles. Is there any other ways that this can be contracted?
Those are the major ways. So the idea of HIV transmission, which a lot of people have the misinformation that you can get it from bodily fluids, is often so false and so misleading that people often freak out when they don't need to.
Okay.
So the main way you can get it is through blood, semen, vaginal secretions, breast milk. That's it.
What about saliva?
Very unlikely. And when I say, again, don't take this for word, but the idea of how much saliva you would have to consume to get an HIV infection from somebody who's infected, I'd say it's over a gallon.
That's a
That's a lot.
that's a lot. That's
So,
That's a lot.
and that goes for urine, that goes for feces, and that goes for any other bodily fluid, tears, whatever you want to come up with. The idea is not so much that the fluid does not have something in it. It has a lot of stuff in it. But the idea is how much of it is in there. So the amount of HIV that's transmitted is transmitted highly in blood, breast milk, semen, and vaginal secretions. All the other stuff, the amount of HIV, if it is in there, is so low that you would have to get so much of it in your system for you to somehow go from being non-infected to infected. And a lot of people don't get that. And that's why a lot of times I'll have patients that come to my office, and depending on who I'm working with, they will freak out when I do certain things in the room with a patient because they are like, oh, this person's HIV positive. And I'm like, what's wrong with shaking their hand?
Right.
What's wrong with taking a tissue from them that they cried on and throwing it in the trash? Oh, well, it was tears and so.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you know what you know and you're educated on this, you will potentially see that the likelihood of you transmitting it is so low that it doesn't bother me at all because I learned that.
Right.
But a lot of our people, and I say people, not black people, Hispanic, but people in general, will say, I can't eat after so-and-so because at this point, they have HIV. So if I use the plate that they used, even if I wash it, if I'm using the fork they used, if I'm using a brush that they used, I can't because I can get it. And it's just completely false.
So let's, because I know these fellas as well as me was interested in talking about what's going on locally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's take a step back, if you don't mind, just briefly just talking about what exactly HIV is.
Right. Absolutely.
Because I think people, before you go, I think people sometimes put HIV and AIDS together like they're the same thing.
Right.
So
So to make it as simple as possible, because I believe that's the way to oftentimes reach a lot more people, HIV is an infection that you can get when a person who's positive, meaning they have the virus, actually transmits some of the virus to a person who's non-infected, and that virus basically makes copies of itself to start to lower your immune system. So the idea of the virus is it actually gets transmitted through the 4 things that we talked about, and once it's in your system, it uses your immune system against you to start making copies of itself. And the more copies it makes, eventually it overwhelms your immune system to where you start to get sicker and sicker and sicker. And if you have gotten so sick that your immune system is now lower than a certain level, you are now considered an AIDS patient. And that comes into when you go into immunology, which is basically CD4 cells and all of that stuff. So if your CD4 count is less than 200 by the standard that's put out today, you are considered an AIDS patient. But if you are above 200, you are an HIV patient. Now, can you have AIDS and go to HIV? Yes.
I was just putting that.
Can you have HIV and go to AIDS? Yes.
Right.
The point is, people hear you have AIDS, all of a sudden it's a death sentence. Maybe if we're in the 1990s, but nowadays I have patients that go back and forth. Some patients that have started out in the AIDS category, now they are the HIV category, and they are young, healthy, well. I have grandmothers that have HIV. I have great-grandmothers that got HIV. And the idea is you literally have to start to realize that this has changed from where it started, where people used to get it, and you had the idea that once they got it, they were gone.
Right.
Well, I'll say that question for when we start talking about stigma, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a question when it comes to.
No, I was gonna ask what all it entails at this point, the treatment.
I'll say, again, depending on where you're at with your numbers, it usually involves you taking what we call antiretroviral treatment, which is usually a combination of medications that basically get into the system and kill the virus.
How many medications?
Well, it used to be back in the day, around 1992 or so, that the antiretroviral treatment came from 1 pill, 1 medicine, to 3 pills, 3 medicines. And now, up until 2019, we're down to single pill regimens where it's 1 pill with 3 medicines in it, 1 pill with 4 medicines in it, or 1 pill with 2 medicines in it. So now we're actually found in certain instances, depending on who the person is and their rate of resistance and all of that, the idea is some people can literally hold down and kill the virus and stay undetectable with 1 pill, 2 medicines. So it's actually gone from 1 pill, 1 medicine to 1 pill, 3 medicines down to 2. It keeps changing. And it changes because medicine is not a constant state. Medicine has advanced. Just like back in the day, people used to die from polio. Don't happen anymore because medicine's gotten better. So people will think HIV from 1980 and not realize we're in 2019 with a lot of advances. So people don't get that, so they're thinking differently, and it's actually a lot better now.
It's funny. I was thinking about when Chris Rock was doing his comedy special. He was talking about how medicine gonna get so good, you gonna be like, man, I think my AIDS flaring up.
Right. It goes to show you, I believe that was recorded in the 90s, early 2000s, and it was a lot different. And at that time, made perfect sense. But nowadays, it may still be relevant, but it may not be the most accurate.
So, have they narrowed down the like where it came from, how it started?
So I'd say yes and no. A lot of the data and the literature says that it actually originated in the West African part of the world.
Of course.
And it actually
That was sarcasm, y'all.
That's what the data says.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the idea is that, again, I'm not going to act like I know how, but they said it originated in actual monkeys or chimpanzees. And somehow it went from monkeys and chimpanzees to cross species. And in the 1960s and 70s is when they started to see cases in humans. And then in the 80s is when it started to actually catch traction because a lot of people in certain parts of the country started to come up with these weird infections and cancers. And they used to basically call it gay cancers or gay infections and so on and so forth. And you can actually pull newspaper articles that talked about the gay cancer, meaning if you're a gay person, you got cancer.
Yeah.
And no one knew what it was because they never saw it before. So now it's actually a lot more researched, a lot more information has come out, but that's kind of the idea of where the origin is.
So, I know that the data says that it originated with monkeys in Western Africa, but, and I could be ignorant to it, but I don't ever hear anything about them studying HIV or AIDS in monkeys today.
And I think it is indeed that a lot of people just don't know. That's probably where it's most studied. A lot of the stuff in the beginning starts off with them testing a lot of things on certain types of monkeys that have the infection to figure out, can they use this medicine? Will it actually be sustainable? And eventually it'll progress to trials on humans and so on and so forth. But a lot of it starts off with the monkeys.
Okay. And I had one other question in regards to, because I know it was attributed with gay people, especially in the 80s and 90s. But why is it more prevalent amongst gay people versus heterosexual people?
And that's a good question. I think a lot of it depends on the type of transmission.
That's probably more behavioral.
No, it's not. It's absolutely not from what I believe and what I've seen. I think it has to do with the rate of the mode of transmission. So a lot of people don't realize that you are able to get certain things depending on where you put certain things. To be more specific, if the amount of infection is in the 4 things we talked about, semen, blood, and you're talking about, of course, breast milk and vaginal secretions. The idea is if a person, and this is a little graphic, if a person is sexually active and they're engaging in anal sex, there are a lot of blood vessels in the anal region and the rectal region. So if you have a person who has a lot of virus in semen and it's actually being put in a place where there are a lot of blood vessels, it can easily transmit through that mode because of the way that there are. There are not a lot of blood vessels in the vaginal cavity, if you will. So the idea is it's less likely, not impossible, but it's less likely to be transmitted in that manner compared to you have a lot of vasculature in the rectal anal region and you're putting something in there that can get absorbed really quickly.
Gotcha.
No, I was talking about from like a psychological standpoint, and they say that, for example, a guy that might not be fully open to his sexuality, using a condom he may not use a condom because psychologically that might make him think about being gay. I've actually read an article about that.
Really?
Well, I think again that just comes from a place of being misinformed. And I think a lot of times the type of sexuality a person has doesn't necessarily contribute to it from a behavioral standpoint, because if you have it, you can have sex in a number of ways and still potentially transmit it, whether you're gay or not. If you're a heterosexual male who is having anal sex with the female, she can get it in that way because it's the same mode of transmission. But it's not so much that a gay person who's not aware that they're gay versus a gay person who knows they're gay is going to get it more frequently just because of the status of being gay. And I think that's an issue a lot of people have because it's easier to put that on people that are gay. And all of a sudden, we again start to talk about stigma. So that's why it's tricky. And I don't want to make it sound as if...
I'm only interested in a culture of condom usage.
Yeah, so again, the idea is condoms have been shown to help decrease the rate of transmission, and it's because it's a barrier method where you're saying that, again, it's less likely that semen is going to come into contact with whatever vessel that we're talking about because of that barrier. And I think that's the main reason that condoms are recommended above a lot of other quote-unquote safe sex practices when it comes to transmission of STDs. Not just HIV, but syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia. The idea is you're stopping that infected semen from getting into a place that it can replicate and make more infection. So that's hopefully something that a lot of people realized, with the hope of not only decreasing the rate of HIV infections, but also all STDs. And I say that because we talked about HIV when it comes to Baton Rouge and New Orleans. We can go into all of them because I treat all of them. And we are number 1 or number 2 oftentimes in a lot of ways in the other STDs as well.
Do you think that in today's time HIV is more akin to like herpes?
Not even close, in my opinion. Is it a infection that's hard to get rid of, if you will, uncurable? At this point, yes. But the idea of what it can do and the impact it has on a community globally, not even close.
Well, I'm taking stigma out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, like, is that how you look at it? Kind of like it's not as serious as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
So, if I'm understanding correctly, you're asking, is HIV like herpes, where now there's better treatment, it's less likely to cause problems? In some ways, I would say so. The idea of herpes a lot of times can cause very minimal things if it's not treated properly.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will remain asymptomatic and never have a outbreak, if you will, when it comes to herpes. HIV, if you don't get treated, it's going to do something.
Yeah.
So in a way, I will say, yes, they're similar from a concept standpoint, but if you're talking about mode of transmission, what happens if it goes untreated, it's unlikely that you can put them on the same platform, on the same scale, because HIV untreated will eventually cause problems.
With the advancement of medicine when it comes down to HIV and AIDS, do you think that has made it kind of harder in combating the disease because people don't take it as seriously because they're like, oh well, medicine has improved, I can live a normal life. Does it make it harder to actually combat the epidemic?
I think in a way it does. People oftentimes don't think it can happen to them. It's like heart attacks, it's like strokes, it's like car accidents.
Yeah.
Until it happens to you, it couldn't happen to you.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that's the way that life is in general.
Yeah.
HIV oftentimes is looked over because it's not affecting me, it's them. It's somebody else. So if you know somebody who has it, it puts it into your world and you think more about it. Just like if you got a relative who's a diabetic.
Do these statistics break it down into like age?
Yes, absolutely. So the highest,
the younger you are, the more fearless you
absolutely,
are. Yeah.
and also the dumber you are a lot of times
Right.
because
Yeah.
you think you can't, you're invincible.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and that's the highest rate. It's usually your 15 up to your 30s that are the highest rates that are people with new cases. Notice I said 15,
Yeah.
not 50,
Yeah.
15. And
That's crazy.
And that I've literally in the Baton Rouge area. Right, in the Baton Rouge area, I've actually diagnosed multiple teenagers and 20-year-olds. Diagnosed them as in, we tested you, you are positive. And you can see their whole world change.
Yeah.
And I mean change not just in the sense of how they're going to react, but also they're thinking about all kinds of stuff. Am I going to be able to get a job? Am I going to be able to have kids? Can I get married? Can I actually live into this age range? Now, the thing is, when we're good at what we do, eventually that goes away. For every person I can tell you who we diagnosed and they were in there in tears, bawling, not knowing how they're going to make it, a lot of them are on treatment and they come in and they laugh and they joke with us when they see us now, months later. A few months. Some people, it takes years. I diagnosed a gentleman, I think he was in his 40s. And I literally asked him before we tested him, do I need to test you for HIV? And my favorite response that I get all the time is, you can do it if you want to, but I know I don't have nothing. And when I called and told him he needed to come in and see me, he had no idea. And when I told him what he had, quiet, silence. And I could not get him to come back after that visit for a year and some change. He didn't come to see me. Now, he may have went somewhere else, which I'm hoping he did. But it's oftentimes the problem of you don't want that problem. And then when you get it, all of a sudden it's, well, what am I going to do? When a lot of times you hear us oftentimes telling you, go to your doctors, go to your healthcare appointments, get this figured out ASAP so we can get you on treatment and get it worked out. But people don't think that way. Again, it ain't my problem. It ain't going to happen to me. And it's never going to happen to my people because we all straight over here. Mind you, you don't know what everybody's doing. Ain't nowhere in the world you could be with somebody 24 hours a day, 7 days a week and know everything they're doing.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can have confidence.
Right.
You can have reassurance. But until you know, you really don't know. And oftentimes, the way you know is to get tested and to get tested regularly if you feel like you need to, which I often I recommend at least annual testing.
Right.
At least, especially if you're in a high-risk area. like Baton Rouge,
Yeah.
or New Orleans, or Miami, or Washington, D.C., or Baltimore, or San Francisco, and I can go on and on and on. So why wait until you get a phone call from me to say, I got checked, and I know I don't, and I got checked again, and I know I don't.
And so since you're, one quick question, Los, you're a specialist in Baton Rouge, of course, that I would think that you care about the black community.
Absolutely.
Because it's devastating our community.
Absolutely.
I was interested in knowing, like, what kind of psychological impact it has on you.
Absolutely.
Because you see how it's affecting our community, and then you're telling people, like, hey, you have HIV. Like, I would figure that takes a toll on you.
Yeah, it does.
I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off. We gotta take a quick break.
All right, that's cool. That's
That's a good question.
So we're gonna do more right after this.
You know your credit score bad. I'm not surprised you on the job, but that's solid quality time. Right. Why is Steve Harvey still writing books? Wait a minute. Like, if I want you, I ain't taking you to Waffle House at 2 a.m. Bullshit. Hey, look, I care about you. We going to Waffle House.
All right, everybody, we are back. And man, we're going to get right back into that question. So I believe Stan was asking you about the impact that it has on you, the toll it takes on you,
Right.
Dealing with the type of patients you deal with, and having to break the news. You was about to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's actually funny. It doesn't have as much as it would in other areas. I mean, I think in my field, I got into it for the right reason. So it's very rewarding more than actually depressing, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I'm actually rewarded to have somebody come in and have no idea what's going on and educate them and get them to better health. It actually gives me more motivation to keep doing it and to actually help our people, black people specifically, to get to a better state. I was having this talk a week or two ago about the idea, no, it's actually last week specifically, about the idea that your grandmother, my grandmother, great-grandmother didn't have access. They couldn't make it to a doctor, even if they wanted to. And the idea of them being able to get access was so far gone that now they have access to someone like me. I feel like I'm obligated to give them a better outlook on life and health. So it actually is a rewarding thing for me. It doesn't take as much of a toll. Sometimes there are tough days, but I think that's with anything.
Well, also, I think you came along at a much better time.
Yeah.
If you came along 30 years ago,
Yeah.
it might have been a different story.
Right, and I absolutely agree that a lot of people whose backs I'm standing on, who paved the way for me, who went through a much harder struggle than I probably ever did, have made it to where, in my mind, I can't fail and I cannot quit. Because, again, people getting dog sicked on them and hoses turned on them and telling you can't drink from this water fountain, and you think I'm going to be upset about I got to sit here on the phone and talk to an insurance company? That ain't a problem. That's nothing to me. And I take that with pride for the idea that there are people who can't do that. So I need to do it for them because they can't do it for themselves.
Right.
And that's part of the reason why I do what I do, and I go so hard for the patients I see. And the people who know me know that when they come in the room with me, I'm straight up. I tell them, you might either hear some stuff you don't want to hear, but you're going to get it straight. Because there's a lot of other people out there that don't give it to you straight. They tell you you're doing fine when you're sick.
Yeah.
They tell you your numbers ain't that bad when they're horrible. And I'm not the best doctor for everybody. I learned that a long time ago. Some people don't like my style, and I'm okay with that. But the people who like it and get it, they trust me, they do a lot better whenever we hit the same vibe, same wavelength, because it works out a lot better.
I need more doctors like you.
Right.
I appreciate that.
We were chatting a little bit before this, so I kind of can tell that, you big on community.
Absolutely.
What do you feel is kind of the impact that this has on the black community in particular?
Yeah, it's devastating. I think there are a number of words you can come up with, but devastating kind of stands out to me because a lot of our people are the highest rates of infections. Have the highest rates of infections. We're the people who have the most healthcare disparities. We're not just talking about HIV, we're talking about heart attacks, we're talking about strokes, we're talking about cancers. And a lot of times we're the last to get the help that we need because of a number of reasons that we can go into or we cannot go into. But the idea is it can devastate a community. It can devastate a family. It can devastate generations if you don't get the help you need, the care you need, and the things you need. And I think overall our communities could be better if we're more educated on it and we find people who care and do the right thing.
Do you think that's more mentality, stigma, or do you think a lot of it is socioeconomic?
I think it's all of the above. Stigma for sure. A lot of people feel like if they have it, especially in the black community, they can't talk about it. Because if they talk about it, they get treated differently. And if they get treated differently, they're all of a sudden excommunicated from their family, from their circle, from their job. So the job is a whole nother thing because certain jobs, depending on who's your boss, if they don't get it, they're going to treat you differently. I've had plenty of people who literally will come to their doctor's appointment and say, I had to quit my job because they started talking about me. And I couldn't work there because they treated me differently when they found out. So that's another issue. Socioeconomic, absolutely. If you can't get to the doctor, you have no means to actually get the care you need because your insurance don't actually line up with so-and-so. Of course you're not going to get the care you need, and all of a sudden you're sicker and sicker and sicker. So how are you going to get better? You can talk about another topic that I teach about with my residents and my medical students and my undergraduate students is something called social determinants of health, which is basically a bunch of things that determine health outside of the clinical side. So are you living in a safe neighborhood? Do you have access to healthy foods? Do you have an actual mode of transportation to get to the doctor? All of those things impact the black community, and it definitely plays a part in this because it's the exact same thing. It just it's easier to unpack if you put it in one specific disease process because again, if the local specialist that takes your insurance to treat your HIV is literally 20, 30, 40 minutes away and you don't have a car, how you gonna get care? So now you gotta go to a person who has no idea what you got and they're gonna just make it up as they go. And then at that point, you're basically left with a little bit of hope, but a whole bunch of questions, mystery, and maybe again a coin toss on if it's going to work out or not.
Is the Mid-City location the main location that I guess treats HIV patients in North Baton Rouge?
I would say it's one of the main, probably one of the biggest. I will say in Mid-City there are at least 2 to 3 clinics that take care of a lot of HIV positive patients and other patients that have low socioeconomic status, indigent, lack of transportation, and they do a good job of it. It's not easy to often locate and find it because a lot of times it's hard to advertise stuff like that because when you say, I work at the HIV clinic, what automatically happens? Stigma. Nobody wants to go there because everybody got HIV, and if I go there, I got it too. And the problem is, again, if we treated HIV like we do other chronic issues, it wouldn't be that. Because you don't say, oh, that's the diabetes clinic. I ain't going there because you got diabetes. I'm gonna get it too. You know, you got this problem with high blood pressure. If you go there, that's the high blood pressure clinic. But when it's a HIV clinic, all of a sudden, all bets are off because you can get it from walking in the door. But if you know the modes of transmission and you understand how it works, you can sit in the same waiting room with the person, and it's unlikely you're going to get that compared to stuff that is way more contagious. And I mean way more contagious. Certain things are so contagious, it literally comes from skin to skin contact. Whereas HIV doesn't do that. But people don't think that because in their mind, it's now been stigmatized so much that nobody wants to deal with it.
Okay.
I got a question. While we still on community, you mentioned earlier that you also treated like Hep C.
Absolutely.
And I read, been doing the reading, that that's something that affects the black community as well.
Right.
So can you talk about exactly what that is and how it affects the black community?
Right. So Hep C is a virus, and the way, again, I break it down to the patients that I see who are newly diagnosed. Hep C comes from 2 parts of one word. So hepatitis, hep, H-E-P, usually in the medical community stands for the stuff like liver disease. And itis is usually inflammation. So hepatitis in so many words is liver inflammation. So you can get hepatitis from a number of things: drugs, alcohol, medications, and viruses. So Hep C is a type of virus that causes liver inflammation. That's it in a nutshell. How do you get it? Pretty much the same thing as HIV, but less likely from a sexual standpoint. So it's not as potent in semen and vaginal secretions. It's pretty much blood to blood. So the idea is if you get a blood transfusion, you're sharing needles. You also are sexually active in anal sex. Still blood to blood type of transmission. In some weird ways, if you brush your teeth with somebody else's toothbrush and they were bleeding and you bleeding, then you can get it that way too. But the idea is once the virus is in your system, it oftentimes attacks your liver more than any other place. And it causes so much liver damage that you can eventually get liver cancer, cirrhosis, and a bunch of other stuff.
So what's the difference between hepatitis C, B, and A?
Basically, the type of impact it can have on the person. A is pretty much what we call, trying to think of the proper term, in so much it's self-limited, meaning once you get hepatitis A, it causes so much of a problem and eventually goes away on its own. Okay. Hepatitis B is actually one of, if not the most contagious. Hepatitis B is something that if you get it, it is no cure for it and actually can cause more damage. It also can get transmitted from skin-to-skin contact. So you're more likely to get hepatitis B if somebody's infected and untreated than you are to get HIV or Hep C.
They have immunizations for A and B, right?
They have immunizations for A and B, and that's why we oftentimes are trying to get everybody vaccinated because once you're immunized, you're less likely to get it. And again, it protects you from it.
But I'm shaking my head because now they got them people out there that's like, man, don't get your children vaccinated.
Yeah.
Like, man, y'all tripping.
Yeah.
I just heard somebody say that a couple
I heard
of
somebody
days
talking
ago.
about that recently.
And we do our due diligence in the primary care world to try to educate them as well that the idea that vaccinations are causing problems is often, again, same thing, misinformation. It's the idea that somebody somewhere thought it was a good idea to put out this article that people get autism and other problems from vaccinations, and it's just not true. There's data and literature that has shown that that's so untrue, but again, people, when they're scared, they don't want to deal with stuff. When you're afraid of something, how likely are you to deal with it? So you can be afraid of anything. You're not going to say, you know what, let's go ahead and try it anyway when you're afraid. So people don't want their kids to get sick, which I respect, but they don't realize that the amount of sickness they can get down the road is probably far less likely than they will get anything from an autism standpoint.
Yeah, I read something about a measles outbreak
Oh yeah. So measles,
recently. Yeah.
mumps,
Measles coming back.
rubella. All of those are the exact same idea that if you're vaccinating people and you're vaccinating them well, you're going to eliminate that. The one that you always will hear a lot of doctors talk about is polio. Polio was so much a mandation to get. Is mandation a word? Did I make that up?
I think
Hey, we're going to roll with it. If you did, hey, look at the word today.
I think
I
you
the
made
word
that
today.
It sounded good. I was like, man,
It's a word today.
I'm gonna look that up after the podcast.
I'm like,
we gonna roll with
it's
it.
rare out here
Keep
word
going.
I've never heard before.
Right.
Keep going, Doc.
And
We're
that's
going to roll with
that's
it.
the thing. Y'all joking, but I tell people, look, if you say stuff with confidence in this medical sense, they'll be like, man.
Hey, that's how I was just now.
We
Like,
gonna roll
I'm
with
gonna
it.
Google that once I leave here.
Trust me, I'm a doctor.
Nobody stop me.
Well, the idea of polio, it was mandated that everybody needed to get vaccinated. It wasn't most people, it wasn't the majority, it was pretty much everybody. And polio is pretty much eradicated in certain countries that have vaccination programs. So you might have polio, again, in those third world countries overseas, but in America, I don't know the last time you've heard somebody say they had a true case of polio.
Right.
So why is it that all these other things that have vaccinations do not eradicate the virus, the bacteria, the way that we want? Because a lot of people don't want to get vaccinated because they have a lot of ideas that it can't actually help. It's going to cause more problems and so on and so forth. And again, if you educate yourself on what it is and how it works, and if you're a doctor, nurse practitioner, PA, whoever it is, does a good job, you will potentially see the reassurance that that's not what it really is. It's just misinformation. And that one cousin that you heard about that one time 10 years ago that had that one
He
problem,
was totally fine.
it had
until-
nothing to do. It had
Until you had the
nothing to do.
vaccination. I just
It
read
had
that.
nothing to do with that
Yeah.
vaccination. It had nothing to do with that disease process. It's a bunch of stuff you had no idea about, and then you blaming it on that one thing.
That's them YouTube educators.
Yeah, he went from
Hey, don't lie. I just read a post about that. That's what somebody said. It's like, to his second vaccination, my son was normal until his second vaccination,
Yeah.
and then he just
They
Shut down.
Went from gifted to Rain Man.
Yeah, and that again, that often happens where people will not realize that certain things are there. You just didn't see it, and then you attribute it to the most recent thing that happened. I'll have people that come in, and this one is a sore spot, and I'm gonna be honest with you. The flu vaccination often gets a bad rap because people will get symptoms from the flu vaccination that are like a cold, and then they often say, "I got the flu," when you didn't. You got a cold. You got symptoms, which is normal.
Oh no, you don't know when you got the flu.
Right.
Yeah.
But no.
You can't just shake the flu like that.
No, I have had people who flat out swore they had the flu when they had none of the symptoms, but they had something. And they could have gotten a cold regardless if they got the flu shot or not. But once they had the flu shot, it automatically is the flu, and the flu is the culprit, so we're never going to get that vaccination again. And then when you have these flu outbreaks, these flu epidemics, why do you think it happens? Because nobody wants to get vaccinated. And if you say, well, why is it happening so much in this community? Because a lot of times the people who don't want to get vaccinated are the ones that are uneducated, low socioeconomic status, people who don't have the transportation to get to the vaccinations, and so on and so forth. So the idea is a lot of that is our people.
Yeah.
So you recommend? Time out. So you recommend? Because I never get the flu vaccination,
neither.
honestly. Because I rarely get sick.
Absolutely.
Period.
Now, and again, I want to clarify: if your doctor is as good as they're supposed to be, they will talk to you on a case-by-case basis about why you should or why you shouldn't. Certain people need it. If you're asthmatic, you're a smoker, you have lung disease, all of those things, you are more risk to get the flu and potentially have a bad outcome, a pneumonia, or something where you're hospitalized. If you're an elderly person or you're a child who has a lot of immune issues, you're more likely to get a problem, so we recommend vaccinated. Some people don't necessarily need it, but we recommend it.
Right.
And I say it in another way. A lot of times I tell people, a lot of times in the medical field, are mandated to get it. It's not a question, it's not a recommendation, it's you need to get this or you can't work here. So how is it that everybody in the medical side has to get it, but it's so bad? Because a lot of times people have that misinformation or that mistrust for the medical system.
You know how we are though, man.
Yeah.
To be as religious as black people are, we are so superstitious.
Right.
You hear one person be like, man, I heard you get the flu shot, you gonna get the flu.
Yeah.
They putting the flu on you, man. You gonna get the flu.
But look, I used to be like you until I got the flu.
Right. Absolutely.
And now I get the flu shot every single year.
But
I never get it. I don't get
But
it.
in a way,
I remember
I
you
got
said
the
that.
flu this year.
Yeah.
I had the flu in January. February, I got my flu shot.
Yeah. And absolutely, I'll say it. You're right. They are putting the flu in you.
Yeah.
Because that's how vaccinations work.
Right.
Vaccinations are them taking a piece or a small portion of the bacterial infection or viral infection and put it in your system so you can form a reaction. So the next time you get exposed to it, you can fight it off or lessen the symptoms. I use I love analogies. So I'll tell my patients, it's like if I say right now, I want you to go drive to the Bay from Louisiana with no map. Tell me how well it go. And they'll say, what you talking
Today's
about?
world, that's not happening.
Right, but then when I say, well, if I give you a trial run, so when you go to drive the next time, you're going to be more likely to get to the Bay, they're going to be like, yeah, that makes sense. So the vaccination is a trial of your immune system to get you ready for when you come in contact with it again. It's not you just winging it and saying, come on, flu, let's see what you got. And usually the flu wins.
Flu's a bad man.
So again, when you have that vaccination, it may not always protect you where you don't get it, but your symptoms are a lot less severe. The problems you have that you've taken that test run are less likely to happen compared to when you didn't have it.
Okay. Hold on, let me ask my question. Y'all been going. We done changed topics.
Go.
So back on the HIV
Yeah, I was trying to bring it back.
and medicine, right?
Yep.
So you know how, the human body changes, medicine changes, right? So, like, you know how some people get treated with cancer, they say, the earlier you come in,
Absolutely.
the better we can treat you.
Yeah.
And also, you know how sometimes people come in and they get treated, but nothing's really working. Their health keeps decreasing and decreasing. Is that the same thing that happened with HIV?
I would say formerly, yes. There were times where people could come in and have an infection, and no matter what treatment we gave them, it didn't do much. But the treatment has been so much more advanced, and it's so much different that if you know how the medicine works, the idea of you getting on treatment very early in the process of you being infected, the likelihood of it failing is so small that it's almost across the board, across the country, across the world, that we tell people you get in, you get tested, you get diagnosed, you get on treatment as soon as possible, the less likely you're going to have any problems.
Okay.
It's almost, again, like if you come in and you have an issue with a skin infection. If we catch it when it's a small infection, we put you on antibiotics, you may not even realize it's a problem because it's not causing you any symptoms.
Right.
But if you wait until your whole arm is red and it's swollen, you're going to probably say, well, now it hurts. I'm having a lot of problems. I can't feel my fingertips. Well, we can treat you, and the good thing is it's probably going to go away, but you may have lost some sensation in your hand because you waited so long.
Right.
So the goal is to get on treatment as soon as possible to help to keep your immune system as strong as possible. Because the longer you have the infection and it's not treated, your immune system is getting hit and hit and hit. And the equivalent analogy is that if you have a very tall wall, that's your defense system, security system. If that wall is high, when you don't have HIV, as soon as you get HIV starts knocking these bricks out. And we're lowering your wall until eventually something can get over the wall and basically tear you up.
Right.
So I'm knocking these bricks down the longer you can. The longer you go without treatment, your wall is coming down, and eventually that wall can't go back up. Your immune system will not recover up to where it used to be because it's been damaged so much. So that's why we want you to get on treatment as soon as possible to maintain that immune system.
Okay.
Well, man, we got to dive into this stigma. I mean, we've already kind of touched on it
Yep.
a little bit. I know you cleared up some of the misconceptions
Right.
about the transmission.
Right.
One of the things, I mean, ultimately, what had us reach out to you was we were doing a little discussion on social media about a law in California where they were trying to decriminalize HIV to a certain standpoint,
Yep.
making it a misdemeanor as opposed to a felony.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I'm in agreement with it on a large scale because I think the thing that a lot of people miss is the intent to transmit it versus the transmission happening. If the crime, so to speak, is a person giving it to someone and they're knowledgeable that they have the infection and they don't disclose the status and you automatically say it's a felony when you have no other context, it can oftentimes lead to people getting criminalized, sentenced, and put away for something that will ultimately affect their life for the rest of their life. And a lot of people who may be listening or may not don't realize that a felony is a real thing. When it takes away a lot of your access to federal programs and things like that, and you don't have much already, and they're automatically taking away your federal funding, your housing, your access to food stamps and all of that, and you gave somebody a felony because of something and you didn't think of context, it's real. And I don't think people think about it like that. And I don't think people think about it like that because they don't understand all of the small parts that go into it. Because who do you think gets most criminalized from these types of cases?
Us.
Black people.
Right.
Black women are going to jail way more often than the white males who have this same issue. And when I say that, people are going to either do one or two things. Nod, or they're going to clutch their pearls. Because it depends on which one you are.
Wait, you saying black women are going to jail at a higher rate for HIV?
They're getting criminalized. So the case comes up of...
Because it's more of them, remember?
But is it for sexual reasons or for the breast milk?
It's all of the above.
Okay.
Because if your statute is felony or else, what are you going to do?
Well, I can't speak to California or any other states. Here in Louisiana, intent is an essential part of the statute.
Absolutely.
You have to be able to prove intent.
Yep.
It has to be knowingly. So
That's hard, right?
But how? Yeah,
That's hard to
It would
prove.
be hard to prove. It. I would think it would be hard to improve.
How you prove somebody's intent that they was trying to deliberately give you HIV? Like,
well, I mean, if you can show that they knew,
And that's the
for whatever reason
and
that they had the disease.
And I think that's the problem. The problem is the idea is therefore it is a problem because you didn't disclose the status when you don't know the context. What if a person is a sexual worker? And a lot of times people think of sex workers, they think of dirty people that are out here doing the absolute most, and they automatically have this negative connotation. But if a person is a sex worker and they doing this to literally make ends meet because they have no other sense of making money, and if they tell the person that they're about to have this practice with that they are positive, and this person literally goes off and tries to kill them, are you going to tell me that at this moment you want me to say, hey, I'm a sex worker, I want you to know I got HIV, don't kill me, but let's go ahead and still get this in? People would be like, well, that's a sex worker, who cares? Well, again, what if it's a mom who knowingly has it, but doesn't tell their kids they have it, and the kid gets into an accident, and she's bleeding because she's trying to stop the kid from bleeding, and now she passes it to her kid. Well, according to that, if that person literally wants to try to criminalize their mother, their father, that person, they can immediately all of a sudden say, this is an intent issue because you didn't tell me. And again, the context is the biggest thing in my opinion, because if you don't understand the context of what the situation is, and it's if you know and you don't tell people it is a crime, oftentimes we can get into a sticky situation where a lot of people can eventually have a felony on their record behind something that's just a misunderstanding. In the heat of the moment, you didn't have the opportunity to do it, and so on and so forth.
Well, I'm not talking about misunderstandings. I'm talking about person A is HIV positive. They know they're HIV positive. They see somebody fine. They want to have sex. Disclosing their status would hinder them being able to have sex. And they go ahead and have sex, and they have unprotected sex. That person needs to go to jail. In my opinion.
And again,
Hold on. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say really quickly, according to certain laws, they will go to jail.
You know, in my opinion, that scenario, that's a felony.
Again,
in my opinion.
And that's why I say, I think that's where the human side comes in. Because some people don't see it that way, that it's a felony. Because in certain instances, if the person is taking their medicine, they're undetectable, the idea of transmitting the virus is so unlikely that the new statement is you equals you. Undetectable means untransmittable. So if you're telling me this person's on their medicine, virally suppressed, and can't transmit it, you're going to say they are a felon because they didn't tell so-and-so that they are HIV positive. Yes. But the issue is, what if the person doesn't know any better? What if they don't know any better because they're a teenager? And they're infected because they got it from their mother. And now they're about to have sex for the first time. They know they're positive, but they're like, well, I don't think I need to tell them because I don't know the laws.
I don't care.
And that's the issue. And I think that's the huge issue.
Here in Louisiana, ignorance is not an excuse when it comes to certain crimes. For example, if you sleep with a girl that look like she's 25, but she's 16, don't matter. There is no excuse. You catching that charge.
I'm sure. And I think, again, that's the problem, because the way people think a lot of times, and this is where I oftentimes will butt heads with people, is that the idea is this is the way it is, that's the way it's going to be. And that's where we run into a problem. That's why a lot of black people are often left behind, because they think the way they think, and we're not able to change it because the system doesn't change. We're often thinking this is the rules we play within, and you need to find a way to win in those rules. Why don't we change the rules? Why can't we?
I don't think that rule need to be changed. Now, we can do more outreach to try to educate people further. So but if you know that you are HIV positive and you have sex with somebody else and you don't disclose you're HIV positive and you have unprotected
what if they
sex,
lie?
Well, I'll say this. I'm mostly with you, but I think there should be exceptions. Like the example that he just gave with a 15-year-old that truly could be ignorant because they're a child. They're literally they're a child. All 15-year-olds don't have the same maturity level.
And I'll take it one step further. What if they're 18 and don't know any better? Now they're an adult.
I think the juvenile system works different.
But what if they're 18? What if they're 18 and you don't know any better because you came from a broken home and you don't have a lot of education because you barely got out of high school or you didn't get out?
If you're 18 and you got drugs on you and you didn't know how much time you could do when you got caught with the drugs, you still going to jail.
I'm sure. But should it be a felony every time?
First time though? First time they might.
Yeah.
The first.
So I think
should it be a felony every time?
So what you're saying is, you're not necessarily arguing that that's a crime. You're just saying should it be a felony?
I'm saying failure to educate yourself about your condition should not be an excuse for giving somebody else HIV.
But how can you educate yourself about your condition when you have no idea how to educate yourself about anything? You're telling me now a person who can't even read can somehow go educate themselves on what HIV is when all they know is I got it?
What if they don't know?
They have no idea that they potentially can transmit it or not. They think, again, I got it, I'm taking my medicine, I can't give it to anybody because that's what I've been told. And now you're saying, well, so-and-so said he told me he had it. I'm sorry, he told me he didn't have it. They could be lying. They could flat out lie and say, I found out that you got it. You didn't tell me you have it. And now I'm taking you to court. You, the lawyer, are now going to prosecute this guy and put him in jail for a felony when it's a lie.
Yeah, what if he did tell her and she said no, he didn't? Then what? It's a lie. You think it still be a felony? You should go to jail?
So again, context is the point. You literally are saying, you got it, you didn't tell him, so-and-so said, you didn't tell me. You are now literally on trial to be a felon.
That comes down to credibility. Who believes who?
But again, 18-year-old who don't know any better.
What about, like you said, 18-year-old, like the 18-year-old that it got passed down through her mother or parent, whoever. Say her mother. The mother never told the child that she was HIV positive. The child is a virgin, 18. Never think, oh, I have it. I never had sex. I don't do share needles. I never had any type of interaction with blood. Then they decide to go, oh, okay, I meet a guy, I like him, and have my virginity taken. And then they pass HIV along to that person.
Yeah, but from the beginning, I said that you have to be aware of the fact that you
and that's the law. The law is you have to be aware. But I'm going to give you a different scenario. And again, this is why. The way the law stands, you're saying you have to have intent. That's what I'm hearing, correct?
Yeah.
But the issue is not about intent in a lot of states. In a lot of states, I don't know specifically about Louisiana because, again, I don't know every word. But I know a lot of states have laws in place that gives a damn about the intent. They could care less about intent. It's you got HIV, you didn't tell the person, automatically you're on trial for being a felon. And California, along with other states like Colorado, have started to literally get to the idea that you are more at risk to get other viruses and bacterial infections that can kill you a lot faster. So why not take it down to where all of them are on the same playing field? Because you may have a law in place that says syphilis. If you don't tell somebody they got syphilis, it's a misdemeanor. But if it's HIV, it's a felony. So how is it that one is any different than the other? Because of stigma, because of misconception, misinformation. And the idea is that if HIV is so bad and you can transmit it because you didn't disclose it and so on and so forth, it's a felony. And that's the issue I have. It's more so about the idea that it has to be a felony and there's no context. It's this or nothing else.
Well, okay. First of all, the syphilis versus HIV thing. Like you said, it's the stigma. So now this new person has HIV.
Nope, that's not the way the law works. The law is not that you get it.
I'm only talking about what you're saying.
But the law is not if you get it. It's if you don't disclose it. It doesn't say if you get it. It says if you don't disclose it. Meaning, again,
I know what the law says. But you were talking about what's the difference between syphilis and HIV, and I'm trying to answer that.
One's curable?
Not just curable, but it impacts your entire life. You just got through talking about how people got treated differently at work. People might get treated differently by their family at church. This person might want to get married, might want to have a family. All that's impacted by them having this disease that somebody knew they had and had unprotected sex with them anyway. Now, as far as the whole 18-year-old and young and all of that, where is the line where you have to have responsibility for self? Everybody can have an excuse that I'm ignorant because where I came from. That's with any crime.
Absolutely.
You know, I can rob somebody. I can sell drugs. That's the environment I grew up in. I don't know no better. But at some point, as an adult, you have to take responsibility for self.
Well, I think
so. Where's the line?
Well, again, if we're talking about drugs and everything else, and again, I'm gonna be very honest with you. I'm not a lawyer. I can't tell you about cases and all of that context, but I can say, in my mind, the issue oftentimes is we look at stuff with black and white and don't realize things of generation. You don't look at scenario. You don't look at upbringing. You don't look at that. So to answer your question, where do you draw the line? I think you draw the line when you start to literally put in the idea that there is a human factor into all of this. If you're talking about the HIV versus syphilis, syphilis impacts you just as much as HIV if it indeed is not treated. So the idea is that one's curable, one's not. So why is it that one is a misdemeanor and one's a felony? Because they're both diseases, they're both transmittable, they both can cause problems.
I'm asking about that exact scenario that you gave. 18-year-old don't know no better. Okay, he's 18, so we gonna give him a pass. What about the guy that's 25, grew up in the same circumstances, he still don't know no better? Do we give him a pass too?
I think you give people a pass if it indeed is warranted compared to there is intent. The intent is the big word that you said. You have to improve that this person knowingly had it
Failure to disclose.
and did
Like
not
you said.
disclose it because they were trying to willingly give it to someone. It's not, I have it. You don't necessarily have
That's the difference. It's
Yeah.
like they're willingly, they're trying
So-
to give it to somebody.
So you're telling me- let me give you-
So anybody that thought that because of the medications or just their own ignorance, that in doing this sexual act and not disclosing it, they didn't think they was going to pass it on. That person shouldn't get charged with a felony. That's what you're saying.
I said they should be charged. It should be a case-by-case basis, and it shouldn't be a felony. I think it should be something less than a felony. Because again, felony is too easily
come
thrown
back
around.
from a felony, though.
Felonies are too easily thrown around. Mandatory minimums and everything else that comes up, it ain't something that people realize how big of an impact it is. So while y'all locking up all of us because of something that literally is not completely understood, not researched, the literature, the laws, the statutes are behind compared to the data, we're literally losing our people behind people having misinformation, misconceptions, and stigma. And that's where I fall on it. I think in very plain terms, it could be a lot better. It could be a lot more up to date. But people don't want to do that because this is the way it is. Why change it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The problem is it's been broken and it's never going to get fixed until somebody like me, you, and everybody else starts to realize and wake up that this isn't right. It's something that's been put in place since the 1980s, 1970s, whatever, and we need to update it.
So let me give you two scenarios. So on one scenario, you got a 20-year-old who has contracted HIV. They took the test, and you can check their medical records to see that they've been going to an HIV doctor, and then they still end up giving it to somebody. You would be cool with them getting a felony.
I think, again, felonies is tough. I think in certain ways, if it is indeed where they're literally going around infecting
Say
people
that-
after
Say that again.
I was saying if somebody's 20 years old, they've contracted HIV, you can see their medical records that they've been going to the doctor continuously for treatment for this disease, and then they still
Don't
end
disclose.
up giving it to somebody in a sexual manner. And I got what you were saying about, if the virus is so low in them it's undetectable. I get that, but they still end up giving it giving somebody HIV. I asked them if that was a felony compared to another 20-year-old who contracts it. You can find a medical record that they contracted it. Somebody told them they had HIV, but they weren't getting. You can tell there's no documented evidence to show that they've been getting treatment. They've been going to a doctor. There's nothing documented to show that. And then they give somebody HIV. Would you treat those differently?
You can have it. You can get the treatment, and still potentially not be aware that in that given situation that you could pass it on.
Yeah, I guess strictly speaking, like sexually though. Like if you
All this.
if
about
you
is
had
sex.
unprotected sex.
Yeah.
But to me, that's what a difference. To me, that's what a difference is.
But
But
the-
he's saying
but the
that
law-
even if they have unprotected sex, but they wasn't aware of the possibility, like they were less aware of.
No, but that's what I'm saying. To me, in my opinion, if you are continuously going to the doctor, you should be aware. That's just my opinion.
But again, the way that it's written, it's not about
Yeah.
sex.
Failure to disclose.
It's fair to disclose. That means if you are an IV drug user and you say, I had a test one time 20 years ago and somebody told me I had HIV 20 years ago. I had no idea what they were talking about. I was high out of my mind.
Right.
And somebody shares a needle and they don't get it. But they say, well, I found out that person A had HIV and was told 20 years ago and they never told me. I'm going to go ahead and throw them in jail. Now you have a case because they did not disclose. They have been diagnosed and previously informed. And with them now being diagnosed, previously informed, and did not disclose, even though they were both doing criminal acts and both were high as kites, at that point, you're still saying this person should go to jail and have a felony, when I think, again, the context is everything. Because if at the context point, you don't add that into the equation, you're going to eventually put people in a situation that oftentimes limits a lot of stuff when it comes to their life, when it shouldn't be that way. That's my opinion. You're going to probably find people on different sides of the equation who feel strongly that every time this happens, it should be a felony. But the issue I have is until it hits your front door and it's your sibling, your mom, your cousin, or whatever, Tell me if you feel that same way every time. Because the issue is, we oftentimes say, that's over there, this is the way the law is. It don't bother me because it ain't at my front door. But if it's your family member, are you going to be standing on the same side saying he's a felon? Because he didn't tell him. Mind you, he didn't tell him because of other extenuating circumstances. They feared for their life. They feared that if they told them, they wouldn't get a job. There's a whole bunch of reasons why people don't disclose that we never think about, because the only thing we think is you're sexually active, you know, and you don't tell somebody before you have sex. That's the only way we hear it. But the laws don't apply to sex and sex only. It applies to non-disclosure in all instances.
I've had family members that I deeply care about that I've had to try to help them get the best outcome for their legal trouble that they've been in. But at the end of the day, the law is the law. If you know what the law is and you do it anyway, that's your ass.
But what if you don't know the law? According to the way it's written right now, you're a felon even if you don't know.
Yeah, but like I said,
As a lawyer,
once you reach a certain point in your life, I'm asking you, where's the line? You got to be responsible.
Well, again,
You can't just go around here saying, "Oh, I didn't know." Here's some HIV. Hey, I didn't know you three y'all had some HIV too. We had an orgy. Like there has to be a line somewhere.
and see, that's the issue. The problem is you're throwing it around like it's literally Skittles.
Yeah.
It ain't. It don't work like that. And as soon as you literally step outside of lawyer, only lawyer, law is this and law is black and white, you may start to realize it don't work that way. But a lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of people hear HIV is bad, therefore people who have it and don't do this are bad people. That's not true. So I see it different.
I don't think every law is black and white. But I feel the way I feel about this.
I understand.
That's just
And
what it is.
I think that's fine. But I also will say there are a lot of people who don't feel the way you feel, hence why California changed.
And it's fine.
Colorado changed. And eventually, a lot of these other states are going to change. And the problem is the people who oftentimes put their flag in the ground, this is how I feel, I'm not going to change. That's your prerogative.
Yeah.
You can be on any side of history you want. My hope is that you'll be on the right side when everything is said and done, because right now it sounds like this is a felony. I'm not going to change my mind. That's cool. And I can't argue with you about how you feel. But what I can say is, if that's the way it always is, a lot of stuff that comes around for our people wouldn't change.
Well, I'm thinking about the impact on the person that's getting the HIV.
But they're not getting it. That's the context.
Potentially getting it.
Yeah, so
He's saying
I
they
think
get a felony if they
like-
potentially get it or get it.
like if they don't get it, they can still go ahead
But
and
that's
bring
different.
charges.
That's a different situation.
That's not.
But you
the
can't-
law
that's
is
what
what
it is. Law.
it is.
That's
What you
law.
just said.
I'm talking about how I feel about it, though.
I'm sure.
That's what we
No,
talking
but
about.
you're
I'm talking about how I feel
but
about
you're
it.
talking about
I'm talking about the
Only if
people
they
that's
get it.
actually getting HIV.
Yeah, but see, but he's just talking about the law in general. You're talking
Yeah.
about a specific scenario.
That's
He's
what
talking
it is.
about the law in general.
And you're making my point by that scenario. You're taking a scenario and saying this is what the law should be for that scenario. And I'm not arguing with you.
it
What
seems
you're
like
saying
he's
is
fine with
wrong.
it.
I'm saying that
that
all
law is
scenarios,
law, right?
all scenarios are now under this umbrella of what you're saying when it
Well,
shouldn't be.
I still don't feel bad.
I'm sure you
Even
don't.
if the person don't get HIV.
I'm-
Because you rolled the dice with somebody.
I'm sure you don't. But again, you are now positive and you don't realize that you're positive, but so-and-so said that they know you're positive. They found out and somehow they tell people
But-
that you didn't tell me. Now you're on
Well,
the
that's-
fight. Now
well-
you're in the fight of your life because somebody is lying on you.
Well,
and
that's-
according to you, I'm okay with that.
Well, that's not what I'm saying.
But you have to be okay with all of that.
I said,
But the law is law.
I said at the beginning, a situation where the person know they got it,
yeah,
and then they go
but-
to sleep with somebody knowing that they got it and have unprotected
But
sex.
again,
That's what I said.
No, I
But you just say
I
you
get
cool
that.
if they don't get it. You say you cool with that too. You say you cool with them getting the
I
felony
said,
even if they don't get
I
it.
said, even if they end up not getting HIV, if the person had HIV, they knew it, and they went and had unprotected sex with this
Okay.
person, and
But what if they're lying?
But again, let me
then that's
let me-
not the situation I'm talking about.
But
I don't,
but the-
I don't
under
think
the
every
umbrella.
law is
But the
black and
whole-
white. The law is unfair. That's
Exactly.
that's just the truth.
So you have to put all of that under
and
there.
you're saying that the law is unfair, and I'm cool with that. That's what you're
Every
saying in
law
this
is
area.
unfair.
And you're cool with that.
I didn't say that.
But that's what you're coming across as, because right now, again, we're giving you multiple scenarios.
I told you the situation
So in that
I felt like should be a felony.
But right now, the way the law is written, that situation,
I didn't say that.
I didn't say you did.
Okay.
I said the way that the law is written, all of this falls under the same umbrella.
Yeah.
There's no felony A. In situation B, it's a misdemeanor. In situation C, it's a citation. Everything's a felony across the board.
But what I'm saying is, it's not like people just picking on people with HIV. People are going to jail.
They are.
Yes, they are. But they not only picking on people with HIV. People going to jail daily for things that they did not do.
Absolutely.
Because
And that's not right, though.
And that's
I'm not
the point.
saying it's right.
So we
But
saying
you
the same
just
thing
said
for HIV. It shouldn't be right.
It shouldn't be a felony, and it shouldn't be that way unless you can
I-
literally give me a certain context where it is malicious intent. That's how I feel. Now,
Well, you shouldn't be able to go to jail just because somebody say that you did something to them.
but it should always be a felony, though, right?
If you can't prove it.
It should always be a felony, though,
I
right?
didn't say it should always be a felony.
But
I
that's
said
what
a
this is saying.
specific situation
But that's
where
what-
I felt like it should be a felony.
But nobody, I don't think, I don't think people were disagreeing. Like, I don't disagree with your scenario.
We're not disagreeing with if they
You-
know.
Like, again,
But you try to make it seem like
no.
I think
I don't think
that somebody should go to jail in every scenario. I told you in this situation, when these set of circumstances line up,
Again.
somebody should go to jail.
But again, you were talking one specific scenario.
Mm-hmm.
All he was talking about was the law in general,
I understand what he's saying.
and that it's
And-
like
and-
blanket. It's like
and
a
I'm-
blanket coverage.
And I'm saying that the law is unfair.
Again, okay.
Somebody call the police. I could call the police right now and say that Byron punched me in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And they will come and arrest Byron,
I'm sure.
and he'll go to jail.
Yeah.
And we'll have to go to court,
Yeah.
and we'll have to stand. He'll stand up there and say, "I did not punch Jay in the mouth," and I'll stand up there and say,
Yes, he did.
"He punched me in the mouth. He should go to jail forever."
And according to the law, if it says that in all scenarios,
Who they find to be most credible wins.
If they literally say in all scenarios,
But you don't think that should change?
in all scenarios, Byron is a felon.
Well, what I'm
Regardless
saying is,
regardless if he backhanded you, he gave you 5 across the lip, he
your
dropped the elbow on you,
Without knowing any context.
without any context, he a felon. You're okay with that?
I didn't say I was okay with
No,
that.
he's asking you.
I
Are you
know.
okay with that?
No.
So again, that's why the law changed. That's the point.
Yes. I'm telling you that
Yeah, we got
there is unfairness in the law
Right.
across the board, not
Right.
with just HIV.
Yes.
I'm not okay with the unfairness in the law.
Yes.
But I'm not backing down on my specific scenario that I talked about. Y'all, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be back on board right after this.
You know your credit score bad. I'm not surprised you on the top, but that's solid quality time. Right. Why is Steve Harvey still writing books when it's supposed to be? Like, if I want you, I ain't taking you to Waffle House at 2 a.m. You bullshit. Hey, look, I care about you. We going to Waffle House.
All right, everybody, we are back. So,
Man, that was a good one.
just for the record, just to be clear, there are many inequities in the law.
Yes.
There's many injustices. We've talked about the unfairness in the law.
facts.
I'm a former public defender.
Lord.
I've seen a lot of it, especially poor people. So, no, I don't agree that everybody should go to jail in every circumstance. All I'm talking about is the specific circumstance where someone know they have HIV and they have unprotected sex with somebody anyway because they don't care.
Okay.
That person should go to jail.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying that a mother who got HIV and pass it on her daughter when the child come out and be like, well, when you was in my womb, I didn't disclose. I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm only talking about this one specific instance.
Okay.
Okay? Everybody on the same page?
We good. So you saying the way the law is, they should break it down more so that one specific instance, make sure that fall under felony, right?
Those are the victims that I care about.
Okay.
you know.
So they should adjust it though.
So you're fine with not just slapping a felony on anybody who just doesn't disclose it.
It's like he said, it's a case by case basis.
Okay.
But when
okay. No. So I don't. Listen. No, listen. Time out. Let me.
But I never.
No. Let me say.
I never disputed that.
Let me say this, and that's what I was about to say. I don't think there was any major disagreement between. I mean, I think there was some slight disagreements. Don't get me wrong, but I think for the most part, you was thinking of one scenario, and he was just talking about
In general,
all the scenarios, and that he wouldn't slap a felony just like just blanketly, like you know, if you just didn't disclose. And I know you weren't disputing that, but I think that's what he was saying, and you were just talking to one specific scenario.
Yeah, but the other instance that I kept trying to get an answer to was because he was talking about the 18-year-old
Right.
that know he got HIV, but for some reason don't know any better, and he just having unprotected sex.
That don't
anyway.
matter, right? Because law is law.
But see, but that's why. Okay, that's
And what I want to know is at what point in this man's life, because 18, you are a man, does he have to accept responsibility for his actions?
and
I think so.
Doc, you
If
can
he 18, we gonna give him a pass.
We're gonna wrap this up in a second, but Doc, you can correct me if I'm wrong. What I took from what you said was that it just depends on the case and the scenario and the evidence that's presented.
So it's just, okay. So 18, we gave him a pass. You got the same person.
Yeah, but
they
it's
25. It's the same circumstances, but they older.
But and again, what I took from him, in his opinion, that it would.
So it don't matter how old you are.
But you also got to think about when they contracted it too, like at the age. Like, so just because you're 25 and you got it, don't mean you had it since you were 18.
Absolutely. I think, again, in very plain terms, it's a case-by-case basis. I think the law should be changed, and it should be changed to where it reflects the idea of malicious intent to have this person potentially placed in a position to get a felony.
Well, your intent might not be to give them HIV. Your intent might just be that she fine and you want to have sex with her.
I still think it shouldn't be a felony.
So that's a misdemeanor too.
So y'all are just opposed.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's a circle. We're going in circles.
So he's
man.
not gonna be able to answer your question in any other manner.
That's fine.
That is
That's
just
fine.
a case by case.
I just wanted an acknowledgement that he can answer my question. That's fine.
Oh, no, I
Oh, he
answered it.
answered
Oh,
it.
I answered it.
He
You just
answered
don't
it.
like the answer.
Yeah.
Okay, well then we just don't agree.
Again,
Exactly.
we said that a long time
man.
ago. But
Okay.
I understand when it's a lawyer, the
He
lawyer like to
never-
argue.
You know he can't lose. He can't lose the argument to us.
No, he did answer your question, bro. He just
answered it.
Nah, he's been answering it.
Now I'm gonna be honest with you, bro.
Okay.
I'm the auditor here, so
Okay.
this all works. This all works. The whole dynamic works. Earlier, he said that when you gave that, he said it was a case by case scenario. Like he kept restating the same thing the entire time. Like I'm not
That
gonna.
been his motto
I'm not
the whole
gonna front on
thing.
that one, bro.
And I actually have witnesses, Your Honor.
That's fine.
No, for real. I really took it as and I understood what you were saying the whole time. And that particular, I agree with you.
We all agreed on that one.
But I think that
To me, a case by case basis is too general because I asked a specific question. I'm asking about a guy that's 18, and then I'm asking about he's still ignorant when he get 25.
And again,
I'm asking at what point.
And he's still saying that
it's a case by case basis.
That's what he's saying.
But I'm saying if he's just as ignorant at 25 as
So you
18,
saying the
you're
same
saying
guy
that
at
it
18
shouldn't
and
matter at
25?
25?
And it seems like he won't just slap it.
I'm asking how you feel about this specific case.
And he gave an answer from what
It's
I
a case
feel
by
like.
case basis.
Yes, that's
That's not an answer to the specific question.
I don't. But I guess
You
I
gonna
don't
say
see
how he
that's
can
not
answer?
an
He answered. That's his answer.
I asked him how you think that guy should be charged. At
So
25.
one guy, he's 18.
Yeah.
And then
The same circumstance.
so
Same
same circumstance, and then later the same guy. Now he's 25.
I would venture to say that he wouldn't charge that person with a felony at 25 under the same circumstances.
No, but he's saying the same guy. Like the 18, he been knowing since he's 18.
No, you're saying somebody. You're saying a 18-year-old and then some other person at 25
No.
is the same.
No.
Los is saying what I'm saying.
He's saying the 18-year-old found out he was contracted
I'm
HIV
saying-
at 18.
I'm saying
and now he's 25.
He's still ignorant. He don't know no more than he knew
but
at
that's the
18.
thing. But that's very possible.
It is very possible.
But he's
so
saying,
I'm
like-
saying should he
but
still
he's
get a
still-
misdemeanor at 25?
He said his responsibility
Listen,
enough since he's been known for 7 years.
in my opinion, I probably would at that point be like, all right, that's a felony. But from what I took from him, I don't think that he would do that.
I think it again is a case by case basis.
And
And I think
Wait.
and I think the other part is
I'm
if a
asking
person-
about this
Wait.
case. though.
Let him finish though.
if the person is 18, commits a crime, and then commits the same crime 7 years later, I think you can then change the idea that it could then progress to a felony on a case-by-case basis. Depends on the circumstance. Because again, you don't know the circumstance, and under this umbrella, where it stands now, depending on the state you're in, everybody gets a felony. Everybody.
No matter what.
Everybody.
And
I'll say it one more time. Everybody gets a felony. So right now, I don't agree with that. And I think you have to take it on a case-by-case basis to determine if a felony is warranted compared to a misdemeanor.
Now, I will say that I thought you were talking about an 18-year-old and then a 25.
I thought
a
he
separate
was initially
25-year-old under that. That's the same circumstances apply. I didn't realize you were saying somebody who was 18 and found out they had the virus, and then they grow to be 25, and this the same circumstances apply. So that wasn't clear at first. I'm just putting that out there.
How about a 25-year-old, but he's known that he's had it since he was.
But what, like you said,
18.
case by case
No,
though.
no,
Like,
no,
what
I
if
get that's
what if
what
it's
you
two different
meant.
scenarios?
I'm saying,
One was sex, one was
But initially, I'm
like
saying
accidental blood. Like,
yeah.
Thank you.
you know,
That's the point. That's the case-by-case basis. One was a sexual contact. Another one was a car accident where someone's bleeding. He cuts himself trying to pull him out the car. He's bleeding. He doesn't have time to tell her, hey, I'm HIV positive. Do you want me to pull you out this car?
that's
Well,
on fire.
he didn't disclose. But according to you, he gets a felony. Because he didn't tell the person who's now unconscious in the car accident
we got
that
him.
they literally have HIV.
Well, that's the part that I don't understand. I don't understand when I said that person should get a felony.
Again, 18, he had one situation. 25, he has a second situation.
What situation did I say that somebody should get a felony?
Both people have the same
Oh, we just
felony.
use your example, 18 to 25-year-old.
We're just saying.
What situation did I say that someone should get a felony?
Okay, I get it. Okay, we done after this.
Okay, we done. We agree.
Listen.
Well,
You're saying the
well,
circumstance at hand, and you're saying is somebody who knowingly had sex with somebody unprotected, and not one of these other scenarios.
That's all I'm talking about.
Okay.
I'm not on a witch hunt like to
All right,
Nah,
so
we
we
get
good.
criminalize all HIV positive people.
GP, it's on you, brother.
what you got for us, GP? Let's go.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Totally unrelated
It's not my fault.
to felony. What?
Nah,
Whatever you about to say. I'm not responsible.
he not about to say nothing reckless, man. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm about to
Let's
say,
go,
man,
GP.
I got a question. I don't think you was doing too much in '91, but you know, one of my favorite 30 for 30s that I always watch is the announcement with Magic, right?
Yeah.
And
Magic Johnson, that is.
yeah, Magic Johnson. You know, and he got diagnosed with HIV in '91. So I guess my question is a two-part question. Number one, what do you think Magic being diagnosed with HIV did for the stigma? And number two, what do you think? Do you think that helped progress the research? The fact that somebody on top of the world was diagnosed with HIV?
So to answer your first question, what did him being diagnosed potentially do? The diagnosis itself didn't really do much. It's him choosing to announce it to the world.
Right.
So I think people miss that part. It takes a strong person to stand up in front of millions of people,
At that time.
if not billions of people, at that time where there's no treatment,
Correct.
there's no healthy outcome, to stand up and say, I'm positive, and I'm going to bear this burden for all to hopefully see that it can happen to anybody. And then on top of it happening to anybody, it can then potentially go outside of the predetermined thought process that it was only gay men. So for him to come out and say, number one, I have it, and I'm going to tell everybody I have it, was huge to help to potentially eliminate stigma. It didn't do as much as I think it would have done had more people came out and said, hey, I have it too, I have it too, I have it too. But he kind of put himself on an island, and then everybody kind of, in so many words, started having these thoughts that he was going to have these millions of problems that didn't come true. So I think him having his response of being making the announcement was huge. It helped to start to try to address stigma Maybe not as much as we would have hoped and liked, but I do think it had an impact in some way, shape, or form.
Sure.
I think also him coming out and announcing it, and just him over the years is showing people that you can actually live a very prosperous life still while you have that virus.
And I think it's important for a lot of people to...
That life ain't over.
Yeah, a lot of people to realize, besides Magic Johnson, again, if you all potentially knew all of the details of people's lives, you probably are around so many people who have HIV and you just have no idea because they haven't told you. I know plenty of people. I work with plenty of people that are positive. I have people who I work with that I take care of that are positive. And they all are healthy and happy and they do fine. They have no issues except for normal everyday issues that you and I or anybody else can have. And the idea is HIV is no longer the idea of a death sentence. It's actually something that is a chronic disease. And you hear me say it all the time. It's like high blood pressure. It's like diabetes. It's like asthma. You can have it and literally live until you are far into your 70s, 80s, and 90s. So you will potentially pass away from something else besides HIV. Or you will pass away with HIV instead of from HIV.
Now, with the whole magic piece, one thing that after this conversation, one thing I'm thinking about is just how ignorant people are. Because with magic, people always talking about, well, how his wife ain't get it? How his kids ain't getting it? Man, how magic didn't live this long? Like, right. You still hear that stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's just, after this conversation, it just shows like, damn, people are really ignorant to it still.
Yeah. And I think, again, people miss the idea that you are automatically going to transmit it if you have it.
Right.
And we've talked about it earlier, how it's transmitted. You have to have virus at a significant level to pass it to someone. If you don't have any virus in your system because you are taking your medicine and you are virally suppressed, also known as undetectable, the idea of you transmitting something that you don't have is pretty much unheard of. And if you don't get that scenario, if I say to any one of you in this room who don't have $1 million, give me $1 million. Tell me how it's going to work. It probably won't. So if you don't have any virus in your system or so little that we can't find it because it's undetectable, how can you transmit it? So that's why a lot of people don't realize the wife probably didn't get it because he was undetectable.
Do they have like a scale where it's like undetectable to where you can transmit it? Like, what's that like threshold?
I don't think there is a definitive threshold because it all depends on two different people. If somebody has a really low immune system and another person has a very high viral load, the transmission is more likely to happen versus somebody who has a very strong immune system and a person has a very low viral load, but it's still detectable. It's unlikely to happen. It also depends on the mode of transmission.
Right. Like
If it's a paper cut compared to another paper cut versus a sexual act versus injection drug use.
I remember they had a boxer not so long as he was a white boxer. He was HIV positive, but his viral load it was undetectable. And he was trying to fight. And the boxing commission, they wouldn't let him fight.
Right.
They're like, we're not gonna let you fight because you still have HIV.
Right.
But his argument was that he was undetectable.
Yep.
So
What do you think about that?
I think it's perfect sense. It's again, how can you transmit it unless you are potentially having a ton of virus in your system? Now, I understand that there's a lot of context in that, and again, that's when we come into this case-by-case basis of the idea that you're talking about this is a bloody sport, and your blood can go into his blood and all of that. I get that.
Yeah.
And I can't say that I'm completely on the side of you got to let him do what he has to do. I think you have to kind of be really understanding of how this works and have to be at a point of, can we really get to that state where somebody who is HIV positive can participate in certain activities? I don't know how close we are to that. It's probably a long ways away, but I can understand his argument as well.
Because Magic did still play ball, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he came back in '96.
But I think because I remember once, and sometimes like he had blood, like he had somebody with cut or something, and like I think the whole game stopped for a minute. It was like,
I think people will look at basketball
he went on
different.
But that's it, because boxing. That's what I think. Because boxing, you know, it's really good. Like you get a gash cut.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then like if you pay attention, like your blood become on me, like it's like I'm bleeding.
I'm gonna tell you very quickly. The idea I think would make that scenario happen would be if somebody is wanting to box. And the people are saying, we don't think that's a good idea. And his opponent says, I'll fight you because I know you have it and I'm willing to take the idea that we're going to take this away. Case in point, Magic had it. If nobody on the court wanted to play with Magic,
He wouldn't have led.
He wouldn't have played. Other people around him had to become accepting and knowledgeable and willing to literally step on the court with him for him to have that. So another boxer is going to have to meet that boxer and say, I know, I understand, I'm willing to go ahead and step in the ring with you for that to happen. But until then, he's probably going to be on the side of trying to convince people.
Right.
All right, man. Let's move to something a little lighter.
A little lighter.
Little light, little sprinkle.
Transition.
Now, the last person I asked this question to was a huge disappointment.
Oh yes.
Huge disappointment.
Should I know who? Should I know the context of it already, or no? I should just go into it with no understanding or idea.
Nah, her list just sucked.
Okay.
Yeah, it was terrible. I can't lie to you.
Hold on, I get to my list. I'm a guess.
That list wasn't that bad.
You give your list too.
Okay, I'm gonna let the doc go
We
first.
need your top 5 MCs, brother.
So I'm
All time.
I'm a fan of Outkast.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a group.
So it don't matter.
Go ahead though.
That's all right.
So they're taking up 2 slots on the top 5?
No, that's just one. That's just one.
I'm a fan of Outkast, Jay-Z.
All right.
I, in so many words, I can't say for sure that I would put one over the other, Biggie and Tupac. I'd say a strong. So let's say they're a 3 on the list. They're in no particular order. Let me say that.
I got you.
Let's see, number 4. I actually like newer rapper Logic.
Okay.
He's pretty dope to me. And I was gonna say number 5. I don't know. I listen to a lot of music, so it's kind of one of those things where I can just name some people just because I kind of listened to them most recently. So I'd say old first album Kanye.
Yeah.
Oh,
Would be on
Yeah.
Not that old.
We'll give you that.
I was like, oh, 4.
Pre-Kardashian.
no, that's a
Kanye.
long time ago.
There's a
bro.
long time in the entertainment
That
world.
was 15 years ago.
Right, in the entertainment world, he's
Yeah.
44 years old.
Man, we old.
Yeah, yo.
Right.
Yeah, I had a flip phone in 04.
Dang, I remember that.
Right.
Man.
Lowe's, give me your list, bro.
Oh Lord, this is
Hey, man. Hey. So hold on, we doing MCs, right?
Yeah.
top 5.
Because you know the difference between MC and
Bro, I
rapper.
say we ain't just do MCs, bro.
All right, MCs. So, no particular order though. Jay-Z, you know he up there. Joe Budden. I know y'all gonna laugh this way, but hey, when it comes bar for bar,
Okay.
bar for bar. That's what MCs is, bar for bar.
All right, that's cool. Keep on with the list, bro.
We talking about content.
Bruh,
All right.
this for the regular person.
Nah, my list not regular. Styles P. Yeah, that's a goat. That's a goat, man.
Go ahead, bro.
All right, keep going.
I can't choose between Pac and Big, so I'm gonna
Okay.
just put them on the same thing.
Okay, that's cool.
And then gotta throw Nasir up there, man.
All right, I can roll with now. It's not a mother. Joe Budden Styles.
I will also add my other list because it kind of transitioned Black Thought, Quality.
Oh, Black Thought, yeah.
And most definitely throw the trifecta in there.
Oh,
Yeah, Black Thought, yeah, he definitely under
Yeah.
there.
Very
He
underrated.
different. He
Very-
different when it
what?
comes to
Very
rapping. He
underrated.
different. He
I
different.
think it's disrespectful how underrated
Yeah.
he is
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I don't even remember what it was, but it was a freestyle
Last
on the radio.
Oh yeah, Funkmaster Flex.
Yeah, he really
yeah,
like
he
speaking of
different.
freestyle.
Like I said, my list keep changing. Big Crit.
Big Crit.
I was gonna ask you who's a Crit
Oh
fan.
my god.
See,
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Royce the 5'9" up
Yeah.
there for me
Yeah.
too. He different.
Crit.
That's because he like UGK
UGK.
Outkast mixture.
Right.
You know.
I feel like
Nah, but he
perfect
got
mixture.
bars though.
I
Like
feel
Big
like-
Crit be kicking.
I was
Him.
gonna say, I feel like the idea of him producing and writing and literally spitting the way he does, it's literally like a hybrid of stuff that you would never got from the South.
Yeah.
Right.
Because a lot of times you don't have the South being a producer and
I mean,
a
J.
rhyme
Cole did
spitter.
that.
Yeah.
And a rhyme spitter. Not all the time. Like I said, you can give J. Cole that too.
Right.
I give that to him too. But again, that's very rare from the deep South.
Yeah.
Right.
J.
No,
Cole.
hey, see, he was getting
And
spit
he
in North
was-
Carolina.
and he was in New York for a long
Yeah.
period of time. So
Yeah,
you
He from,
gotta-
he from, hey, don't
He
take
from
his
Fayetteville.
Carolina. You
Yeah,
know, he rap Fayetteville. You know,
he rap it, but
That's-
what,
he
a lot
from
of
Carolina,
a lot of
man.
his influence came from
Right.
New York, though.
Yeah, so the fact that Crit is from deep
Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Yeah.
South, and he doing what he doing.
David Banner, he
Yeah.
produced his own music too.
Yeah.
Right.
But to
Yeah,
me,
man.
Crit even more talented than Banner.
Right.
Yeah, I mean from a lyrical standpoint to me
Yeah.
because like I say
If you watch,
he have like it's a different type of content. He have stuff like
if you watch his freestyles,
that you can
like,
digest.
I mean, and I'll put it like this: a lot of times, when I tell people, since I do a lot of music stuff too, you can listen to the song, but take the song away and listen to the lyrics without the song.
That's all I do.
If you do that, you can automatically figure out who is really and truthfully talented on a different level compared to somebody who's just somewhat
Yeah,
talented.
Crit, he hit you right here.
Yeah.
Hit you, like, man.
Yeah. So
I mean, he cool.
Nah, bro. Crit.
He cool.
His
I
nick-
like Crit. I have his albums. He
Yeah.
cool.
I know Joe Budden don't do that for me.
Well, I mean, that's yours.
I'm messing with you.
I mean, you know, and it had people come say Jonah saved their life.
So ain't no Migos on the playlist, bro.
hell no.
The baby. What about little baby, man? The baby, man. Shout out to the baby, man.
Boy, that boy worse than Birdman.
And nah, but since we on music, rest in peace, Nip.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were saying, Migos, I'm a fan of different types of rap.
Cool.
But at the same time, like you said, if we're talking about MCs, I feel like that's a little bit different because, again, take all of the music away
Right.
and say we're going to give you a microphone and, hell, you give them a snare drum and just tell somebody to keep the tap going and see what you're going to do.
Most definitely different. Too.
Right. I don't see too many people who are, quote unquote, at the top of the playlist right now because they have albums that are party music that are going to be transcending so
Right.
many years later.
Yeah, rap was like an art form, you know. It's poetry on music.
Yeah.
And now, man, what they doing now is just
Right.
Now it's a vibe.
Yeah.
I can't get with
It's
it,
a vibe.
you know?
Yeah.
See, that's how you know when they say it's a vibe. It's like it's just for right now. Like the music that I enjoy, like that touch your soul.
I want to see somebody do something that I can't do. I'm not capable of.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I mean.
Like when Black Thought ripped that 11-minute freestyle.
Yeah. And people also sleep on, and again, I'm just starting to go all over the place. CeeLo?
CeeLo Green.
Yeah.
CeeLo Green?
We're back with Goody Mob.
Yeah. He had he actually did a poem, but he did it to a beat. And I can't think of the name of it for the life of me. And I got a homeboy who put me on it. And he was one of my roommates from college. And whenever I heard the poem, but the way he spit it, you could tell that he was a lyricist. And he may be in Gnarls Barkley and he sings and all that, but he can literally spit. He's talented.
If you know anything about Goody Mob, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
So at this point, I think the list can always change, and I feel like everybody's gonna say that. But yeah, I'd just be hard pressed to know the difference between an MC and a rapper a lot of times. And I say hard pressed because a lot of people don't know. It's all in the same umbrella.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's what I'm saying. It's separate to me. Definitely. Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right, well, y'all know we gotta do the Black Prominent Figure. We gonna do this all year round, not just during Black History Month. And we gonna give it to you right after this.
You know your credit score, man. I'm not that's solid quality time. Why is Steve Harvey still writing books? Like, if I want you, I ain't taking you to Waffle House at 2 a.m. I care about you. We going to Waffle House.
All right, everybody, we're back with this Black Prominent Figure. GP, who you got for us, brother?
Man, we talked about him a little bit earlier, man. We got to go with Irvin Magic Johnson. And we talk about Magic Johnson, who's been a champion at all levels. NCAA champion, 5-time NBA champion, Olympic gold medalist on the greatest team ever assembled, 92 Dream Team. But the reason why we're talking about Magic, Byron said a little bit earlier, because he stood up in front of billions of people and announced that he had the HIV virus in 1991, when that was like a death sentence. So he was courageous enough to step out, and it did a lot to help with the stigma for the virus. And not only that, like, Magic went on to live his best life after, man. You're talking about he was the Lakers head coach after. He went and played some more after. He gave a lot of people who in the 90s who thought that they was going to die hope and the courage to fight the disease. So that's why I want to talk about magic.
Cool.
Still living his best life.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
man.
But that's great, Magic. We appreciate the contributions, brother. Byron, earlier you was telling us a little bit about a nonprofit that you're running.
Absolutely.
You want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. So back in 2015, I actually started a program that was intended on increasing the access for students who are interested in the medical field to potentially learn how to avoid pitfalls of getting into the medical field. That program that started in 2015 has now grown into a full nonprofit organization. The name of the nonprofit organization is Comprehensive Medical Mentoring Program. We are housed in 3 cities right now: Washington, D.C., Baton Rouge, and New Orleans, and constantly looking to grow. We also have a far reach across the country, mentoring students online as well as in person, doing clinical rotations in different areas, somewhat in D.C. and even in Cleveland, Ohio. So we're doing a lot of good work as far as trying to improve health and wellness, working on toiletry drives and shoe drives, doing a lot of community service, and also providing opportunities for things like scholarships and internships and other efforts that we are doing for the students out there. So we highly encourage anybody who's interested in the medical field to look us up. We're on social media, Facebook, Instagram. We also have a website. It is cmmmed.org. And again, if you go on there, you can definitely find more information about us, how you can get involved with us. And if you're a student and you're looking to get some of that mentoring, we'd love to hear from you. cmmmed.org. cmmmed.org, and that is our website.
Cool. We'll definitely include it on the caption when we put it on Apple Podcasts and when we drop it on Instagram and Facebook.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that opportunity.
That's
Thanks
awesome.
for
I'm
coming.
sure there's lots of parents with children who are interested in becoming a medical professional. That could be extremely useful.
We need them.
Y'all check it out. Also, in all seriousness, this is a very serious topic. I'm glad y'all had the opportunity to listen to it. I hope that you walked away learning something that you didn't know before. I know I did.
Yeah, we all did.
Right.
Right. And know your status.
So appreciate you dropping that knowledge, brother.
Absolutely.
And if you haven't done so already,
Buy your tickets.
that wasn't what I was about to say, but do buy your tickets. The Biscuits and Bourbon, May 19th. It's the hottest brunch out there. But also subscribe. If you still listening right now, you really like our content.
Right.
So go ahead and subscribe, share it with a friend. Y'all got anything?
Nah, man.
Nah.
That's it.
This
All
was
right.
a good podcast.
All right, that's it. We are out.
Peace.
You know your credit score, man. I'm not astrology on the Starbucks. That's solid quality time. Right. Why is Steve Harvey still writing books when it's Wait a minute. Like, if I want you, I ain't taking you to Waffle House at 2 a.m. I care about you. We going to Waffle